We are back for another episode of your favorite podcast, my favorite podcast, Highside, Lowside. I am Spurgeon Dunbar. Of course, I am here with my co-host, Zack Quartz, and we have got a wild episode for you. Zack, what do we got planned for the audience today?
I'm so excited. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Spurgeon. Today, of course, we'll be doing the usual rigmarole, talking about what's in the news. The topic of today's podcast is motorcycles in movies, which I hope you're excited about. I'm stoked to talk about this. And our guest, who we will interview in brief, and also is a cinephile and loves motorcycles, so he's the perfect guest for this episode. Spenser Robert, our CTXP producer, editor extraordinaire on the West Coast team.
I think it's going to be just exciting to talk to Spenser in general, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, like, you and Ari Henning aren't that good, but luckily you found Spenser Robert, and he has elevated you to the status that you are today. You know, look at you.
It's true.
Yeah. So
you look at me sitting in a room attached to a garage in my backyard.
Look at you sitting in a garage talking to me on a podcast. No,
what a dream.
I think it's going to be really exciting to have Spenser on. One, to kind of introduce him to the audience for people that might not be aware who Spenser is, but then also to get some of his behind the scenes stories. And also, there's not somebody that we have on staff that's going to be better versed to talk about movies and motorcycles. So it's going to be a fun one.
Abso-flippin'-lutely. So stay tuned for that. As usual, of course, right now we have some kind words we'd like to say about our sponsor. Is that accurate?
I think it is. So I want to give a shout out. Zack and I alluded to this last time. He's been busy off in Alaska, riding Little Trail 125s. I've been out in South Dakota, where I helped to set up and participate in and attend the first ever RevZilla's Get On Adventure Fest. For those of you that were out there, thank you so much for coming. For those of you that weren't out there, it was awesome. Like, some of the best adventure riding I've ever done. And the call out for Motul is we were able to put together a booth where we had an array of Motul cleaners and lubes, and it was such a muddy weekend that people were coming back with chains that were destroyed after a day of riding, and we were able to use a whole bunch of Motul cleaner to get those folks squared away. I taught people how to use a snapjack to, if they don't have a center stand on their bike, they can clean their chain really easily. Yeah. And Motul supported the whole thing with piles of free giveaways. A lot of folks left with chain cleaner and lube as well. So I just want to say thank you to Motul, not just for supporting us with this podcast, but also then at an actual live event, they allowed us to take a bunch of Highside, Lowside t-shirts out and give them away for free. And they allowed a lot of people to clean and lube their chains.
Absolutely. So least we could do to thank Motul in this capacity for supporting Highside, Lowside, and reminding you, the viewers and listeners, that they're a stand-up company, helping people keep their chains clean and helping keep us on the air. And whether or not that's good for society is up to you to decide, I suppose. So another next step in housekeeping, of course, is when we remind you that it's really great if you can submit an Apple Podcast review of this show. We know it's kind of a pain in the tail, but it really helps. And
I don't know. I feel like some people are having fun with it. I think I've read some of these reviews recently, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are having a lot of fun with leaving these reviews.
That's true. And that being said, if you do take the time to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, every time we do a Highside, Lowside, we select one or two of these reviews to give away a free t-shirt, a free Highside, Lowside t-shirt. So we're going to jump right into that. Who's doing that? Should I do the first one? I feel like I should do the first one.
Absolutely. I like I can pronounce the second one better anyway. So you go ahead and do the first one.
Winner number one is Clyde Francis, who submitted a review that says, and I quote, love the last episode. He's talking about the Guinness Book of World Records episode. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
Yes. So Clyde Francis said, came away with 3 book recommendations that I would surely read, and a wealth of knowledge about tuk-tuk dynamics and going to the bathroom on 2 or 3 wheels. So we're obviously doling out lots of useful knowledge here. I would like to give a quick shout out because Around the World on a Motorcycle is that book that was written by this one of those Hungarian guys that rode around the world between World War I and World War II, and a Harley-Davidson sidecar that they bought in France. It's a wild story. And I just want to give a tip of the cap to Clyde Francis for actually trying to find that book. Good for you, Clyde. Really appreciate it. And wanted to say that he liked the Guinness Book of World Records episode and that we should give it another shot.
No,
sometime,
he said we shouldn't
like.
give it another shot. He said
Yeah, well,
he said too much of a good thing, and then he basically said the only reason Spurgeon wants to do it is because Spurgeon's a loser, and that Zack won fair and square. So yeah, I think that you picked Clyde Francis for this one just because he said that you won fair and square. So
I wasn't even going to mention that. I feel like he secretly wants that to happen again because he wants to see me crash and burn. But anyway, Clyde Francis, send your t-shirt preference and your address, your size preference and your address to Highside Lowside at RevZilla.com, and we'll send you a t-shirt.
The second winner of the day is 2 for 1. Which I got a crack. I got a little bit of a crack up out of his name.
Yeah,
2 for 1.
Good name.
And that's Juan. And 2 for 1 says great podcast. And he then goes on to say some other things too. But really, what stuck with me was great podcast.
So moving on.
But beyond that, no. 2 for 1 said, my wife recently got back on 2 wheels after a pretty bad crash last year. She was very back and forth as to whether or not she wanted to ride again. I think listening to the podcast, watching Zach's Daily Rider, and then also, some of the adventures that we're all out there doing on motorcycles really pushed her to the point where she missed it too much. So what I really liked about the 2 for 1 is that it's kind of a story about how sometimes the content helps to inspire people to get on 2 wheels to begin with. And it sounds like in this particular case, it inspired 2 for 1's wife to, really think about, does she want to give this up? And it doesn't sound like she does. So thanks for 2 for 1 to write in. And then also she apparently loves your laugh. She likes to hear you laugh. So why don't you give her a little taste, Zach, right now?
I don't know, like laughing on cue is not a class I've taken for the Screen Actors Guild yet. So I'm sorry, I'm not quite prepared. But hopefully, if Spurgeon is half the host he says he is, he will make me laugh during this episode, and everyone can enjoy my my giggle. So anyway, thank you for those podcast reviews. Last bit of sort of housekeeping we need to cover before we jump into the news is a call out to the RPM program that RevZilla has launched. This is Riders Plus membership. Is that right, Spurgeon?
Riders Plus membership is what it stands for, and it gets you all kinds of goodies: free 2-day shipping and returns, 10% off exclusive brands, 5% back in cash. You get like welcome cash. You get Rever Pro free. If you guys haven't used Rever Pro before, I think the Butler Maps integration on Rever Pro is worth it just for planning out road trips and things. But yeah, so there's a lot of great things with RPM. But Zach, do you want to do the honors and hold your issue up first?
I do. Thank you. So we are not salespeople. We're not, this is basically RevZilla Prime. It's a membership program where you get some benefits, which is awesome. But the reason that Spurgeon and I are most excited about it is we made a magazine. It's called Common Tread Journal. It is how many pages long? I think it's almost 100 pages.
We made a print magazine. If you join the RPM program, you automatically get the magazine for free. Mm-hmm. We made a print magazine of Common Tread.
Which is there are lots of snide jokes you could make about making a print magazine in this economy, so to speak.
Eve Assad shot photos. Keep going. You keep talking. I'm just gonna keep throwing stuff out.
Right. There's loads of cool articles and great pictures and no advertisements in this magazine, because that's not the point of this magazine. It's not to sell ads so that RevZilla can make money. It's actually just to take content and put it in a beautiful magazine that's nice heavy paper, and it's fun to be able to work on something like this. I think in the past my magazine experience has been one of trying to make a business out of it, and that wasn't always a picnic, to be honest. So it's pretty rad that RevZilla is doing this thing, and obviously they're trying to entice people to join this program, which has other benefits as well. But I think it's so cool. It's literally just lots of beautiful pictures and great words and cool stories about motorcycles and people who ride from all around the world. And
in addition, Brett Smith wrote an article. So Brett Smith is one of our writers. He wrote an article, the PW50 story, and you get a film accompany with this. So he did we had him produce. We produced a 30-minute short film. And you get that free with the membership too. The one thing that I do want to note is, out of all the people that contributed to this, we actually brought back Mark Cook. So Zach was talking about his previous motorcycle experience. Yeah. We got Mark Cook to be the lead editor on this project. So we we got the band back together. Basically, we basically took the glory days of Motorcyclist magazine, and we've recreated them for you. For Common Tread. So I was very excited to work with Mark on this project. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Mark's work from, again, back when he was, trying to reel Mr. Ari Henning and Zach Quartz in on his own. So the fact that we were able to put this together is, in my opinion, the most exciting part of the RPM program. Now, these will be available for sale separately, but Zach and I just wanted to let you know that this is a thing now, and we couldn't be more excited about it.
Yep. It's hopefully you guys can have a chance to spin through it. There's one article at least by Spurgeon, one by myself, and some actual good writers as well. So we didn't poison it too much. Okay. I said it was the last housekeeping thing. I know it. And technically the next thing we're talking about is a news item. I'll let you take this one, Spurge, but it's sort of like it's a company announcement as well.
Absolutely. So news company announcement. Zach and I alluded to this last time, but we've got a little bit more of this figured out for our little bet, our little wager. So RevZilla is working with the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. We are trying to help fight childhood cancer, and we want you to ride with us. So by the time this airs, the contest will have already started, but that doesn't stop you from joining in. So from August 12th to September 12th, for a month, we're going to see who can ride the most miles. We want you to ride miles too, and we're going to use this to raise money for the organization. Zach, what's the website we want people to sign up at?
I thought you'd never ask. The website is rideforkids.org/ride. rideforkids.org/ride. And that's where you can sign up to be a part of this sort of competition conglomeration.
But I want to be clear. So the contest that we're having with you, our Highside listeners, is different than like just raising money and coming to ride with us at a Ride for Kids event. Zach and I are going to compete to see who can ride more miles, him or I. We haven't figured out what the loser is going to have to do yet, but it's going to be something fun, presumably. And we want you to get involved. So if you sign up at rideforkids.org, which you should all do, screenshot your sign up. Either take a picture with your phone of your computer, or if you're doing it on your phone, just screenshot it and send us an email at highside@RevZilla.com with just the picture of the screenshot. We're going to collect all the screenshots that we get, and we're going to pick a winner, and the winner is going to get a Motul care package. We're going to, kind of reward you for riding all those miles with an oil change kit, some chain lube, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, not that you need another reason to A, take a motorcycle ride, or B, support fighting brain tumors in kids, which, is as good a cause as it gets. But you can also win a cool Motul gift package that Spurgeon Dunbar himself will send to you.
Also, just so you know, Zach, I have a Motul gift package coming for you. It's sitting over on Linnea's desk right now. We just need to tape it up, put an address on, and ship it out.
Because I'm gonna buckle down real hard when we compete with each other.
Exactly. I want to make. I'm sending you enough for 2 oil changes, because I'm figuring you're probably gonna log about like 10,000 miles in the month of August. I know we joked about it last time, but like I did the math in July, and I think I rode like 3,000 miles in July. Like it was something crazy because of like all the Get On Adventure Fest stuff, and I was like, damn it, I would have won. Yeah. You probably would have. I don't know if I could have hung with you. So,
okay.
What was just announced today? I want next news piece. I want you to take this one, because I know that you've got a burning desire. But like, this is going to date the podcast a little bit. But like, what was just announced today, an hour ago? So
you guys can figure out exactly when we recorded this, because this very morning, Valentino Rossi announced he's retiring at the end of the year, which is. Not that surprising, let's be honest. He's 40-something years old, and he's been riding MotoGP bikes for a heck of a long time, 20 years, I believe. Yeah. So it's not, it's not like no one's shell shocked from this, I don't think, but it is still seismic in the industry and in the world of racing, especially because he's sort of still the biggest name around the world for road racing. So
I just had such a hope. Like, I know that it wasn't going to happen, but I really was hoping he was going to come back and have a winning season, like one last time. Like one last hurrah.
I know.
But
it would have made for 10 world championships if he could have won one more. In fact, one more podium. He has 199 podiums in MotoGP, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's right. So it would have been 200. He's just like, but yeah, this is what
I
happens.
respect his decision, but I do say it was interesting in the fact that one of the movies that I picked for this episode was Faster. And Faster was the movie that I saw back in like 2008 or 2009. Like I had just started, I've been riding for a few years, and that's really what kind of like watching that movie is what took my riding to like the next level of like, oh, I want to go do this kind of stuff too. I don't want to just ride around town and take road trips. I want to go be competitive in my mind with like things that I'm doing on a motorcycle. So there's a lot of where I'm at today as a motorcyclist from watching Valentino Rossi and getting interested in a whole new type of motorcycling because of the energy that I feel like he brought to the sport. So while we are all understanding that it's time to retire, I think there's a little bit of me that is sad to see, the end of an era, basically.
Sure. Yeah. End of an era. At least we get the end of the season, the rest of the season to watch him go around. He gets to do a small farewell tour. So I guess that's good. Switching gears entirely.
Well, actually, that's another good piece of news. So we had alluded to in a previous episode about doing a live episode in Austin for MotoGP. That is not going to happen this year. There's some restrictions being placed on Austin with audience and who can attend due to the Delta variant of the coronavirus. So we're just giving you the heads up that we are going to do a live episode somewhere. It's just not going to be in MotoGP in September, October. We might do something later in the year, and then we might do something additionally at MotoGP next year. But for all of those of you, we had a bunch of people writing in saying that they were excited about that idea. So I want to thank everyone that wrote in. But just to give you all an answer, we're going to figure out a different location that we can do that for this year. But it's not going to be in MotoGP in Austin.
What Spurgeon's trying to say is that he has kind of a checkered past, and he's technically on a no-fly list. So we have to work around this.
Hey, we told them we weren't going to talk about that.
Hopefully the whole Highside, Lowside live thing happens, and hopefully we get to go to a MotoGP race sometime again in the future. But it will not feature Valentino Rossi. We know that, which is a shame. Anywho, switching gears entirely from Valentino Rossi, we did want to touch on the 2021 Harley-Davidson Sportster S as well, because this was a bike that we guessed when we had Patrick Garvin on. We went through this whole rigmarole of guessing what we thought Harley's quote-unquote sport bike or sport-ish bike was going to be, and Patrick made a guess, Spurgeon guessed, I guessed, and we got a lot of flack, especially internally within RevZilla, but people saying like, oh, you guys totally missed the mark. But Chase, our producer, kindly went back and looked up the what we had said, and we weren't that far off. Agreed?
I mean, anybody can look back at what we said because it's on the podcast. You can anybody can go listen to the recorded record of what we said.
What I'm suggesting is that I don't remember, so someone had to tell me what I said.
Listen. You clearly don't listen to our podcast. So I am an avid listener of Highside, Lowside. I like the sound of my own voice. But to Zach's point, we had gotten an internal Slack message from like one of the C-suite executives at RevZilla, and he was like, "Ha, your boys missed the mark on that one, didn't you?" And I was like, I don't think we did. Like, we made a comment about it's probably going to have forward controls. It's probably going to be disappointing. It's probably not going to be what we were expecting. And I think all of those things ring true. Like, it has forward controls. It's not. I don't know.
I did at some point say that it could be a trike. I'll raise my hand and say that. So,
Yeah, you were way off the mark with that one. But
that was my shot in the dark. What I actually said.
You didn't say it was going to be a trike. Didn't you say it was going to be like a 2 in the front, 1 in the back trike?
Yeah, sorry, a forward trike. Whatever that. What's that called? How's a trike is 2
Polaris.
in the back?
It's called a Polaris.
No, that's
slingshot.
Not. They don't have the branding on that. Anyway, the point is, the Sportster S. There is a great article that our friend Andy Greaser wrote on Common Tread. He got a chance to ride the bike in California and tell us all about it. And bottom line, it's not the quote unquote sport bike that I want Harley to make, but I'm still excited to ride it. It's got 120 horsepower or something like that. It's probably pretty fun when you twist the grip.
I wasn't expecting it to be the evolution of the Sportster. So I think it's important to note that this is going to be the new flagship Sportster model moving forward, using the same Revolution Max engine that we have in the Pan America. So I'm excited to ride it. I think Andy did a great job. If you haven't read his article, you should definitely check that out. And then I'm excited to see, I know you're working on grabbing one for a daily rider. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yes, indeed. The last bit of news, we second to last bit of news we're going to touch on today. Again, pretty seismic. Triumph announced that they're going to make dirt bikes, which is nothing if not a big deal. Yeah,
it's a big deal, but I feel probably similar to this announcement as you feel to people talking about building land speed bikes out of electric motorcycles. Like,
okay.
I want to see it. So they made an announcement like that they're
Spurgeon says, "Show me."
Show me. Like dude. I've got a slew of KTMs in the garage. I'm excited to see an enduro bike from Triumph. I've owned Triumphs before. I own Triumphs. I have Triumphs in the garage still. So if they had an enduro bike or a dirt bike, like, I'm all for it, but like, I want to see it. So that's my only thing. I think it's a great announcement. I think this is going to be a huge step forward. I think if anyone in the motorcycle world is paying attention, we know that the enduro and the dual sport and the dirt segment is just through the roof on sales right now. So from a business perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense. Let me see what you got.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I'm excited because it feels like it's the first shakeup in a while, and it's the kind of thing that happens in motorcycling it's the kind of thing that almost needs to happen in motorcycling for there to be any shifts in people's perception. You know, like the companies that make enduro bikes and motocross bikes, off-road motorcycles, have been the same for a while. And, we kind of saw this when Harley made an adventure bike, right? Harley made a Pan America, and they did some stuff that no one else, that Yamaha's Super Tenere doesn't do, that KTM's 1290 doesn't do, that the BMW 1250 GS doesn't do, that other bikes in the category that are major players don't do, right? Because Harley thought, oh, what can we do that's slightly different? So I'm excited. I hope that Triumph comes up with something, that they have some strategy and something that they do that other brands are kind of like, oh yeah, I guess, I don't know, we never thought of that, or we didn't think that would work or something. So that's exciting.
For the record, I'm excited as a fan of the Triumph product. I think Triumph does a very good job with their fit and finish and execution on these motorcycles.
Agreed.
I just haven't seen anything yet. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they have. And the other thing is, I'm surprised BMW hasn't done this. Like, for the amount of time that BMW has had in the adventure world, I am genuinely surprised that BMW hasn't created a true enduro motorcycle at this point.
I mean, they even have that little 310 engine that they've like
Jen
adopted.
Loves that bike. Jen absolutely. Like, we got back from Get on Adventure Fest, and Jen was like, "I love this motorcycycle." Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
Whole other podcast. But yeah, they have that little 300cc thumper that I could see like a what would they call it? HP1E or something, right? HP1 Enduro or whatever, and it would be like a little kind of like CRF or KLX kind of thing with a 300cc engine and weighed whatever 300 pounds, and you bop through the woods. You go to the grocery store if you want to. I don't know. I could see them doing that. To your point, I never thought of that, but I'm surprised they haven't done it as well.
Well, this isn't really news, but you just mentioned it. So for those of you out there that had made a comment earlier, too, about the KLR 650, I will be attending that launch in like a week and a half. So hopefully within the next couple episodes of the podcast, we can actually talk about what the new KLR 650 is like. So that will be very exciting. Yeah, that'll round out. So let's stop talking about enduro bikes and off-roading, and let's get on to the final piece of the news. Do we want to bring Spencer on first for this one?
Yes. Okay. This is apropos our topic today. It was a new Bat bike. There's a new Batman. Batman's in some new movie. I don't know. We have to get him to tell us.
Yeah,
right?
He's much more up on these. I don't want to say nerdy things, because then all the Marvel people are going to be like, you don't like Marvel? How do you even do that? So
I think Batman might be DC, but we'll let him.
See, the fact that you know that is so disappointing to me.
Okay, sorry. Now I'm a nerd too. Oh, Spurgeon Dunbar says I'm a nerd.
You haven't worked that voice in a while. I'm glad that we were able to put it in that early in the episode. All right, let's get Spencer on here, and we'll talk about comic books. All right, Spencer, we're welcome. First of all, welcome to the podcast. Before I get into this, it's great to have you here. How's your day going so far?
Well, it's been good, but it's on an upward trajectory right now, so I'm very excited.
Through the roof. Settle a bet for us. Batman, is that Marvel or DC?
I so desperately wish I could have been part of the conversation where you were actually having that debate. And I know that this is a motorcycle channel, so there probably aren't like a ton of nerds out there that are like screaming at their screens, but I would have been one of them. Batman is definitely DC Detective Comics, because he's the world's greatest detective.
Well, we've hired the right man for the job for this podcast. So why don't you?
Hang on.
There's some information in the news about the Flash movie boasts a new motorcycle for Batman. You want to walk us through what we're looking at here for the news?
Yeah, I can tell you guys are both just like brimming with excitement to talk about the new Flash / Batman movie. I know. Listen, it's always exciting to see. It's like anytime there's a new Batman, there's a new Batman. There's a new Batmobile. Sometimes there's a new Bat cycle. I did see some photos of it, and it looks basically unrideable, which is sort of par for the course of any Batman motorcycle, as far as I can tell. But they are doing a cool thing, from what I can see in the photos, where they basically built this fake motorcycle body around a real motorcycle. If you look closely at the photos, it looks like in the movie there's going to be like 2 front wheels, but it's going to be fake. You can see they have little motion tracking dots on the front of the bike, that they're just going to do CGI wheels because the stunt guys need to ride the thing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it'll look good when it's all said and done, though it doesn't ever look exciting when you're just looking at set photos.
So I was picking on the people that follow this stuff. So in a way, I was kind of picking on you, but I was only joking because my question for you, I know some of the trivia here, but wasn't The Dark Knight the last time we saw a new Bat cycle introduced?
Oh, a new Bat cycle. Yes. I just realized I didn't actually get a chance to ask who thought that Batman was Marvel. Which one of you?
I was just picking on Marvel people because Marvel's the name.
He was trying to pick on nerds in general, and he was like, Batman, and people are going to be like, how could you not like Marvel stuff? And I was like, I think it might be DC, and he was like, shut up, idiot.
Yeah.
So
Zach is just as nerdy as you, Spencer. Don't feel like you're on an island here.
I don't think I can hold that torch. But before we get too distracted talking about Bat bikes, and so is it, by the way, Bat cycle? Bike?
In the Christopher Nolan The Dark Knight, that was technically the Bat pod, because it detached from the Batmobile, so it was like a pod that, we don't need to get weighed down in semantics here. You can call it a Bat motorcycle, whatever. It's cool.
Whatever. Bat cycle.
What I remember about that, I was living in LA at the time that movie came out, and they had it on display. So the theater in Hollywood, and I'm blanking on the name of the theater, but they actually had it out in front of the theater on display. So that's why that one sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, that's
Spurge,
a good reason.
Why don't you, as you rightly pointed out, Spencer, our audience might not be as familiar with Spencer as we are. So we've prepared a lightning round. We'll do our best to make it a lightning round and make it quick. But we have a batch of questions, Spencer, that's going to help everyone understand your deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah. So these are
kick it off.
These are questions that you don't. We obviously didn't screen you on ahead of time, but hopefully you'll be able to have the answers for them. So, at what age?
Do I need to have a lawyer present for this? This feels.
I was going to make a virginity joke, but I'm going to pass on that one. What age did you get into motorcycling? Like, how old were you when you got into motorcycling? How did motorcycling enter your life to get you to the point where you're at a motorcycle company creating all these great motorcycle mini films, if you will?
Sure. Well, you wouldn't know it if you'd ever seen me ride a motorcycle, but I think I got my first bike when I was around 3. So I'm like a third or fourth generation motorcyclist. My great grandfather rode until he passed away, and my grandfather still rides. My dad rides. My brother rides. So we're very much a motorcycle family. And yeah, I think the story my dad often tells is that we were riding a little JR50 with training wheels before we knew how to ride a bicycle. And this is back in the day before all these fancy Strider bikes and electric bikes. So I think the best option you had was just slamming some training wheels on a little internal combustion bike. So yeah, I started riding dirt bikes when I was pretty young, and rode dirt bikes for a hot minute, though probably was faster on a dirt bike when I was 3 or 4 than I am now.
So it sounds like one of the questions we had later on, and we can kind of pivot to it right now. It sounds like motorcycling was a family affair for you.
Oh yeah, big time. I remember doing we had to do like a family report in. It must have been, I don't know, freshman year of high school, something like that. Tell us the story of your family. And I did this whole thing about how motorcycles were the religion in my family. I was like, we don't believe in a God per se, but we do really like motorcycles, which is, close to godliness. So the teacher was pretty confused, but it felt authentic.
I mean, it's kind of like church on a Sunday morning if you're out riding a dirt bike around the mountains.
Definitely.
All right, Zach, what do you have for Spenser?
Well, let's see here. This is one question I have for you. Spenser has a deep-seated and long-lasting love for the Kawasaki Versa 650.
Yeah.
He has owned one and often cites it as one of the finest machines ever built. I just to give people an idea of your motorcycling taste, aside from a Versa 650, what's a bike you've ridden recently, or one that always sticks out in your mind as a bike that you loved, and why?
Well, I mean, I don't want to double down on the Versa 650 thing, but I think the Daily Rider board is up behind me, and it's third from the top, and it's less than $10,000. That's just that's a pretty good combination of value, performance, and quality. But other than the Versa 650, which I will always hold near and dear in my heart, honestly, I rode the MT-07 for a while, the updated MT-07, and that bike has really stuck with me. I mean, we did Zach, Ari, Jen, and I all went on a ride one day. We had a Trident, and we had MT-07 and maybe a Versa 650 as well. And in any case, I just remember, do we have something else that day?
A Ninja 400. I was trying to remember what it was.
Ninja 400, that's right.
Yep.
And I think the MT-07 got a little bit of hate, especially from Jen, for the suspension and just like overall chassis compliance, which is totally fair. But I cannot remember a motorcycle that put a smile on my face faster in recent memory than the MT-07. It's just like this rambunctious little puppy dog that just always wants to play. It's so it's just like so flickable. It loves to just do little wheelies and I don't know. It's just like I was excited every single time. I think I told Zach when I picked it up from Yamaha, I ended up getting off the freeway so that I would hit more stoplights, so that I would have more excuses to do little wheelies pulling away from stoplights, just because I don't know. That's the sort of fun that bike inspires.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're
a naked Versa 650, basically.
I was going to say, other than a Versa 650 parallel twin, you would basically just go with the exact same bike in a different format. So
I'm a sucker for value. All right, like 15, 20. I rode the Pan America. I rode the R1250 GS when we had that around. Those are great bikes. Those are all good and fun. But yeah, I know, MT-07 versus 650. What more do you need?
A man of discerning taste.
The T7, again, all anything in that category, I'm a big fan of.
You like mid-sized parallel twin engines, is what
he
you
likes.
Like.
Value.
Yeah.
I don't make the rules, all right? I don't care that it's a parallel twin. I'm not like, oh, parallel twins have so much character. It's just, the proof is in the pudding, so that's all that matters to me.
He likes what he likes, folks. All right, so let's go back and talk about getting away from motorcycling for 1 second. The other part of this podcast is going to be talking about films and movies, and obviously the role that motorcycles play in them. What was your entry level into filmmaking, and how did you get started in this whole career that you're on now? I mean, obviously, for those of you listening, Spenser has been with the company for a little over a year at this point, but before that, he was at Motor Trend and then Motorcyclist, and he was doing a lot of what we see him doing behind the scenes here. But where did you get started in this? Like, what was your entry level point?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it definitely started in, I guess, like, I don't know, probably middle school or high school. I remember going to motorcycle races, and I stopped racing when I was fairly young, but my brother kept racing, and that meant that I still had to go to the races, but I didn't have anything to do. So I was often handed a video camera and be like, film your brother's race, make yourself useful. And then eventually, I was always really into movies, though. So I think motorcycles and movies were my two childhood interests, and they didn't necessarily overlap a lot. I was like, I want to make those nerdy Marvel, DC superhero movies. I also happen to come from a family that's super into motorcycles. So eventually, I got less into motorcycles, more into film. Went to film school, and then I remember at one point having a great conversation with a counselor at film school, who was like, what kind of movies do you want to make? Like, what's your background? And then I was like, I want to make, great, entertaining blockbuster movies, and my background is in motorcycling. And I don't know if he had seen my work or something, but he was like, you should just stick to motorcycles. That seems good for you. And in any case, I started filming motorcycle races when I was in college. I was doing recap series for the There's a couple off-road series in the Southwest United States that I was doing recaps for. I did some recaps for Endurocross. Long story short, that led me to get an opportunity to work for the motorcycle magazines, which led me to meet Zack and Ari, and the rest is history.
And ruin your life.
And look at me now.
Man, if that guidance counselor could see you now, he would just shake his head. Just shake his head.
He would probably be like, I didn't actually think that was going to work. I just wanted you out of my office.
You get paid to do that? Jesus. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well,
let's see. You want to just skip down to number 5, Zach?
Yeah, we should do 5 and 7.
That's what I'm thinking. Why don't you take 5?
Okay. All right, Spenser Robert. Your most memorable moto moment.
Wow.
Yeah. You can do
Heavy.
top 3.
Top 3?
Top 2, top
Goodness.
3, whatever.
You know, like what's my favorite breath of air? Favorite moto moment? That's such
exactly.
It's like when people ask you what your favorite band is. I don't know if that's the same for you guys, but people are like, so what's your favorite band? And I'm like, today? Like when? So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean,
And
other
you're
than
like Maroon 5, obviously. Yeah.
My Matchbox 20 kick lately.
My favorite moto moment, other than every moment I'm riding a Versus 650, is
when you're on an MT-07.
anytime on a middleweight parallel twin, I'm just in heaven. No, my favorite moto moment, that's so hard. We've gone on so many really grand adventures, and motorcycles have taken me to some just sort of amazing corners of the world. So it's genuinely difficult for me to say. I'll pick one that is not an episode that we've ever filmed, just for fun. A couple years ago, my dad and brother and I just did a 3-day ride around Southern California. They both live in Arizona. They came out. I think they were both on 1090 Adventures. I was on an MT10, and it was one of the few times since I've been an adult that the three of us have just ridden street bikes together or any motorcycles together. And it's the very rare period in my adult life where I've just ridden motorcycles for fun. Like, I didn't bring a camera. I didn't film anything. We just rode amazing twisty roads, got to hang out, got to enjoy bikes the way that I think they're largely designed to be enjoyed, instead of always looking at them as like, oh, how could this be an episode of a show we make? So yeah, just having a few days to ride them without any of the pressure that comes with making a adventure into a movie was definitely a standout experience.
I have 2 questions based on that. So one, did you have to fill up your bike like 3 times for every one fill up for your dad and brother?
Yeah, anytime you're at an MT10, the only way you design the road trip is around gas stations.
Right.
And if you don't run out of gas, then you're not trying on the MT10, because it's really, you just like, you twist the throttle a little bit and you blink a few times, and then you're pushing the bike on the side of the road.
I feel like I've seen more than one Instagram post about like Ari Henning showing up with gas to fill up an MT10 for you on the side of the road.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That being said, and this, like, one of the big reasons I love the Versus 650 is because of how much fuel range it has. I think that's an indication of how much I love the MT10, that I would also ride that bike in a heartbeat, even though the fuel mileage is miserable, just because it's so much fun.
Well, it's got an extra 2 cylinders.
It's right there in the name. MT10.
Empty.
It's empty.
They told us.
That's why they
warned
named it
us.
that. Yeah.
Second question, and then we'll move on to the final one, but this is more off of that. So does your dad and brother own 1090s, or were they renting 1090s?
Oh my God. This is where Spurgeon's pants get tight, because he's like, oh, you want to talk about KTMs?
I mean, yeah, that's They hate KTMs. They were stuck with them. They think they're the worst. No, I'm kidding. My brother, my brother has a relationship with KTM. He's a racer and has ridden KTMs for a long time. So yeah, I think he contractually is obligated to ride a KTM these days. Whereas my dad is just he's a team player. So I think he's like, well, one of them is riding KTMs. I'll just do what he's doing. But I don't think either of them actually have street bikes right now. They had 1090s. They both had 790s at one point. They all have dirt bikes, but I don't think they have any adventure bikes right now.
He's a team player / he also likes value.
He does.
Yeah.
I said we can put the little check mark next to talk about KTM in podcast.
Yo, perfect. The Highside Lowside KTM segment.
Yeah, is there a Highside Lowside bingo where it's like KTM, cha-ching?
Zach makes Spurgeon Dunbar voice, cha-ching. We've already hit both of those. So the final question, and then we're going to move on to these movies that we want to talk about. Harry or Lloyd?
I have to marry one of them. I have to what's the
You
I have to
gotta
hang
you
out
gotta
with the
figure.
day?
I'm not giving you any more information, Harry or Lloyd.
I mean, I think Lloyd is the undeniable star of character-wise of Dumb and Dumber, but it's you can't really separate them because Lloyd is no good if you don't have Harry there as a little bit of a foil. So
Right. It's
you
peanut
know,
butter and jelly.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you can really have one without the other, which is not a good answer, but it's what feels right in my heart.
I will take
Do you
it.
have a favorite, Spurgeon?
I would say Lloyd. If I had to, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna. I guess if I'm talking more about if I had to marry one of them, I would want to, take Lloyd home every night.
Something about that bowl cut just does it for you.
That took a strange turn. Yeah, well, I'm sure. Unfortunately, Jeff Daniels is used to that one. Like, oh, you're my second favorite character in that movie.
He's the unsung hero of that movie because he's not doing the super loud things. You just kind of have to buy into him as a character, but still super funny. So you can't knock either of them.
Honestly, I think if I had to, if I was really thinking about which character I like the most, I do like Harry's character better. So yeah, I'm going back. I wanted to make the joke about Lloyd, but no, I think that like if I'm thinking about the movie and like which character makes me laugh more with like the one-liners or the that he says, it's definitely Harry. But so for those of you that don't understand why I asked that question, there was recently a CTXP episode where Mr. Zach Kurtz and Ari Henning rebuilt the Dumb and Dumber mini bike to Spenser's grandiose idea of riding this across the country and actually recreating the scene. So if you haven't already seen it, you can go check out the episode of CTXP where they ride the Dumb and Dumber mini bike across the country.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Is it any good?
I mean, the editing was subpar. The acting was phenomenal.
Yeah.
That sounds about right for one of our videos.
Yeah, that sounds like the theme in general. Good segue though, guys, because the Dumb and Dumber mini bike scene is only a couple minutes. It was 2.5 minutes or something like that. But undoubtedly one of the most iconic motorcycle scenes in the history of cinema. Are we agreed on that? Especially for people in our generation.
Yeah,
and I say
absolutely.
that loosely because Spencer's a lot younger than we are, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think it gets enough credit as a motorcycle scene. Like, I think people almost forget that it's actually a motorcycle. It's like got two wheels and an engine, and people have to ride it from A to B. But definitely, I mean, I think the reason you can tell it's an iconic scene is that like the same as like anytime you see someone running on like a boardwalk, I always brace for someone saying, "Run, Forrest, run." I think it's the same anytime you see a small motorcycle. Like, I think the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind is like, oh, Dumb and Dumber, nice. Like, you guys look like those guys from that movie. So I think that's, it's got like a brand unto itself. It's like the Kleenex. You see the small motorcycle, you think Dumb and Dumber.
I think it's also, I think it's a testament to the movie and the fact that like, there's a lot of scenes in that movie, but it's definitely one that you remember. And usually there's like 2 or 3 scenes per movie where like you go back and you think about it. And I think that that's one of those scenes where when you reflect on Dumb and Dumber, you never forget that particular scene because it is iconic. And you get to the end and they've peed on each other. And for those of you that haven't seen the episode, Ari did. He peed all over Zach. It was great.
So I will say on that note of iconic scenes, when we were recently riding, without giving away too much, we were recently riding a Honda Trail 125 and a Honda CT90, Ari and I. And there it is. There it is in the background. One of the Trail 125s. So, and we were outside somewhere. Long story, doesn't matter. We said, yeah, we're riding these little motorcycles. And the guy behind the counter of this place was like, oh, like Dumb and Dumber. And we were like, well, yes and no.
Here's my business card.
Yeah, exactly. Here's my business card. So to your point, Spencer, we were riding a 1975 Trail 90 and someone thought, oh, Dumb and Dumber. Like, that's how a bike doesn't even have to be that small or ridiculous in motorcycling terms for people to associate it with that movie.
And I think it speaks to the iconic portion when we're talking about these, the motorcycle tie-in here is that there's a lot of people that might not know about motorcycles. They're not avid riders or anything like that. But when they see a small motorcycle, they can make that relationship in their head. And I think that speaks to what we're talking about as well.
So if the Dumb and Dumber bike had been for sale, like in mass,
it was.
Like you could go to a deal.
Oh, I'm
relax. No.
Yeah.
Like production. Like you could just go to any dealer and buy, like any multi-line dealer, and you could just buy a Dumb and Dumber bike. Do you think that Dumb and Dumber would have sold more of those bikes or do you think Top Gun sold more ninjas?
That's tough. I'm gonna say
stalemate. Thank you for listening to Highside, Lowside. We'll see you guys next time.
I mean, I'm gonna say that Top Gun is still gonna sell more of those. What was it, like a GPZ 900 or something? Like you're gonna sell more ninjas than you're gonna sell awful claptrap tiny little motorcycles. Not only because they're just more usable as motorcycles, and people watch that movie and are like, oh, I want to look cool and like salute airplanes as I rip around on my ninja. The Dumb and Dumber bike, I think, is like, it's a fun novelty. But I don't think anyone after riding it around a parking lot would necessarily think, I would like to own one of these. I'd like to have it with me always.
That's true.
So
it would have been cheaper, though.
Yeah, I'm going to completely disagree in the fact that, like, you have to keep in mind that the average individual that, like, watched Dumb and Dumber when it was released probably wouldn't have had enough money to even come close to a tenth of the cost of that Kawasaki. But they probably would have gone out and for like $400 been able to get themselves the mini bike that was mass produced, or even if it was $750, $1,000, whatever, and buy one with their lawn mowing money for the summer, and then just ride it back and forth. Especially if they could figure out a way like you guys did to put a license plate on it. So if they would have been smart, they could have taken like a Honda Metropolitan 50, done it up like a mini bike, had a license plate and some turn signals for it, sold it for $900, and I'm guessing they probably would have sold a ton of those.
And those guys, and you would have gotten just as laid as Harry and Lloyd did in the whole movie.
Yeah. The town is that way. It's that way. Those are two lucky guys.
Back to Top Gun and ninjas, because the topic of this podcast is motorcycles in movies, best and worst motorcycle scenes, most iconic bikes, that type of thing. Spenser Robert, you are a lover of Versus 650s almost as much as you are a lover of Tom Cruise. So here's a question for you: Is the Top Gun scene where he's like riding down the runway, is that the worst motorcycle scene in any Tom Cruise movie?
No. Also, I just want to be, I feel like out of context saying you are a lover of Versus 650s and a lover of Tom Cruise is, I don't
think people are going to assume you're sleeping with him.
Yeah.
Well, unless you are. Do you have a bombshell for us?
Are we not correct in saying that? I mean, you've got the
Highside,
poster
Lowside
above
exclusive.
your wall. Yeah.
If you could never watch a Tom Cruise movie ever again in your life, like Tom Cruise disappears from this earth when you snap your fingers, or the Versus 650 disappears as a model entirely, and you can never ride one again, and no one ever has ever heard of it, which one do you choose?
So I can't. Is it that Tom Cruise doesn't make any more movies?
No,
or
there's never a Tom Cruise movie.
There were never any Tom Cruise movies.
Never.
They're all gone.
Oh, you guys.
So tell me you're not a lover of Tom Cruise.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair enough. I think the worst, this is what I'll say about Tom Cruise. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the times he's ridden a motorcycle in a movie. He rode a motorcycle in Top Gun. He rode a motorcycle very briefly in Days of Thunder. He shows up to the NASCAR test on a Harley, like you do. And he rode a motorcycle in Oblivion. He rode a motorcycle in The Edge of Tomorrow, a.k.a. Live, Die, Repeat. He rode a motorcycle in 3 James Bond movies. I mean, out of all those, the worst one... Or I'm sorry, Mission Impossible.
There we go. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Mission Impossible.
Ethan Hunt movies.
Even our producer, Chase, was shaking his head over here. It's like...
They're
James
like,
Bond.
Spencer's delusional. He thinks that Tom Cruise is James Bond.
James Bond, but better. So I would say out of all of those are the ones I can think of. I think the worst motorcycle ride... Oh, and Night and Day. The worst...
Yeah, Night and Day.
Well, how could you forget that one? Come on.
The worst is probably
Night and Day.
It's probably Night and Day, honestly. Like, I mean, the motorcycle scene in Days of Thunder is brief and pretty bad. He shows up on old Harleys very well, some like Softail Classic or Heritage Classic. Anyway, he shows up and it's just like very kind of machismo. There's not a lot to it. But the motorcycle riding in Night and Day, I remember being pretty offensive for a Tom Cruise movie because it didn't seem like there were a lot of practical stunts. Like I remember a lot of green screen and there's bulls chasing them, and it was like all the things that he normally does so well in terms of making sure the movies have practical stunts with real cameras, not just fake backgrounds fluttering in the back and behind them. I'm gonna go with Night and Day, worst Tom Cruise motorcycle scene. And wasn't there a weird thing with the bike in that? Like they said it was a hypermotard, but it was actually an Aprilia.
Exactly. So it wouldn't have bothered me. Like, I wouldn't be talking about it really, except that I did see an interview with Tom Cruise where he was like, yeah, like we had to use that Ducati Hypermotard because, like, you know, it's so dynamic, and like, you know, we just needed that Ducati because blah, blah, blah Ducati. And maybe that was a contractual thing, and he just sort of doesn't mind blowing smoke here and there. But yeah, the spy shots showed that it was an Aprilia SXV 550, which is a super niche, you know, Aprilia Supermoto dirt bike thing that they actually used, that the stunt guy used to make those jumps and stuff, because it's an actual bike that can take jumps, instead of the Hypermotard at the time was like not particularly ready for
Very
that.
sporty.
So I thought that was a funny kind of sidebar to that he was like, okay, in public, and he knows bikes, Tom Cruise. So it's funny that in public he was like, yeah, you know, like had to have that Ducati. Maybe it's the same company to him. I don't know.
I want to back up for a second and just touch on Days of Thunder, and not for the Harley Davidson that he rode, but I think one of my favorite scenes of all time in movies is when they're taking the rental cars and they refuse to ride together, so they get the extra rental car, and they show up to the dinner and the rental cars are just destroyed. And that is probably one of my all-time favorite scenes in a movie ever. So I'll give it to Tom Cruise for that one.
Yeah. I like.
Agreed. Yeah.
I also like the wheelchair. Wasn't there a similar thing with wheelchairs where they were like leaving the hospital?
They were
like,
always, it was him and his rival. They were just always racing. And I feel like that it does capture, I mean, at least I remember, you know, my brother and I growing up, we saw the rental car scene. And I just vividly remember feeling like, yeah, as soon as we can get rental cars, you know, in like a decade, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
It's like, that's like Seinfeld, right? When he goes to get the reservation and they've given away his rental car reservation. They're like, do you want the insurance? And he's like, yes, because I'm going to beat the hell out of it.
Yeah. So this podcast is not about Tom Cruise specifically, but since we're on the subject, and
maybe we can get Tom Cruise to be on an episode. Maybe if Tom Cruise hears it, Tom, we're looking at you. We'll allow Spencer to come back on again if Tom Cruise wants to talk.
We'll allow your lover to come back, Tom Cruise. Don't worry. So, I brought up I asked you if Top Gun was the worst motorcycle scene, in part because like it's kind of. There are a couple shots that are kind of lame. Like he's clearly on a trailer and he's sort of like vaguely holding on to the handlebars and like looking at the plane, and like maybe even takes the wrong hand off the handlebar at some point. It's like, it's kind of jarring considering how good some of the motorcycle scenes in later movies were, you know?
Yeah. One of my favorite parts about that clip in Top Gun when he's saluting at the fighter jet taking off is you can literally see the hook of the tie down on the front wheel. Because he's on a trailer, and he's got. Yeah. I think you've even mentioned it before. He's got like 4 fingers on the clutch, and he's just like looking off to the side,
like a dweeb.
So, dude, that was my note. I was like, way to 4-finger the clutch, Tom.
So maybe it was early in his motorcycle fandom,
Perhaps.
but the reason I can't call that the worst motorcycle, Tom Cruise performance, or however you want to couch it, is that ultimately I think that movie did a lot of good for motorcycling and the motorcycle industry. I think there were probably a lot of people that were not into motorcycles until they saw that. And I saw Top Gun when I was super young. I mean, it came out before I was born because I'm not ancient. And and I just remember seeing it when I was a kid and being like, oh my God, I got to get a Ninja. Like, a Ninja is a fast bike. And then my brother and I would go to motorcycle dealerships, and we would like look around and be like, hey, do you guys have any Ninjas here? Like, we didn't even know what it was. We're just like, do you have any Ninjas? Because we saw it in this dope fighter pilot movie, and that's what we want. So just show me all your best Ninjas.
Did you and your brother also then go and try out for a beach volleyball league?
We did not. That part was not quite as resonant with a couple of 8 or 9-year-olds, but it's never too late, I suppose.
All right,
yeah,
so
there you go. That's the spirit.
I want to figure out who added. So we have a whole list here. So for people looking, we've got a list of all these movies that Zach and Spencer and I went through.
We've been doing our podcast homework, people.
We really have, and this list. The part of the fun for this was going back and looking at all these movies that I haven't thought about in a while, or movies that I saw as a kid, and I'm like, oh, I want to go watch Purple Rain again. But who put Cool as Ice as the first movie on this?
That was Chase. That was our producer, Chase, I believe. Was it not? Is he nodding?
Chase, stick your head in here because I want people to see your face. Come on.
I think all the dots are going to connect right
on.
now. Yep, that's the
Yeah,
guy.
that was Cool as Ice.
That's the guy. There he is. Cool as ice.
Cool as Ice.
We should start calling Chase Cool as Ice.
Is the best motorcycle scene ever, is what is written on my notes.
Chase was probably like, this is a really good motorcycle documentary. It just really captures the motorcycling experience in the late 90s.
So yeah, that's hilarious that's at the top of our list, which, by the way, not the top of our list figuratively, the top of our list literally, because that's just the first one that was written down, which is hilarious for a bunch of reasons, not least of which is that's the first one that came to Chase's mind when he was like, oh, motorcycles and movies. You mean like Cool as Ice?
He put notes under here too, right? He wrote in, consider the best scene ever. Then he put down like his fun facts about the movie. He's like, rumored that in this film he coined the phrase, lose the zero, get with the hero. Like, who cares? Like, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Chase says that every day. Every morning he texts me that mantra just to remind me.
So, yeah, I hope that we can play at some point. I hope we can play a clip. I don't know if we're allowed legally to do that, but I hope that we can play a clip of Cool as Ice, because it is like hilariously bad.
Dude, the scene where he jumps the fence and lands in front of the horse then bucks the woman off. He's like, what's your problem? And it's like, you just jumped a motorcycle in front of her horse. Oh, it's so like, bad.
Acting like the biggest dickhead in the entire world, and then he's like, what's the matter with this chick? This dame's got a problem with me. I don't know what the deal is. He basically bunny hops a ZX7 sport bike over like a 6 foot, 5 foot fence, horse pasture. It's just hilariously bad, and you can tell even the stunt bike doesn't even look like the same bike. It's a disaster head to toe. But a quick thing I wanted to point out here. I don't know if you guys looked at the link that I put in the document. I never really realized this because I didn't watch Cool as Ice
as much as Chase apparently did.
As much as Chase did, apparently. I've never actually seen that movie. But my dad is a fan of slapstick comedy. And so when I was a kid, we would watch, occasionally we'd watch the movie Hot Shots, which is a Top Gun ripoff, or, spoof. I guess it's a spoof movie. And I never really realized this, but the motorcycle scene from Hot Shots, which again, I really hope we can play a clip of this. The motorcycle scene from Hot Shots is a ripoff of Cool as Ice. Did you guys watch it?
No.
I haven't seen Hot Shots in a very long time.
Well, the woman is riding a horse, and he pulls up next to her, and he's like kind of flirting with her, and then she like makes the horse rear up on the back legs, then he does a wheelie, and then she stands on the saddle, and he stands on the seat. It's actually like very endearing and a pretty good motorcycle scene considering it's an idiotic movie, So anyway, I never put that together until we did this podcast, that the Cool as Ice scene was obviously an inspiration for the Hot Shots scene, which was supposed to be a spoof of Top Gun, which also included a motorcycle. It's all coming together.
So it's interesting. So for those of you listening, we have YouTube links on our paper. So we actually had a Google Doc where like Spenser, Zack, and I spent the last 2 days really not doing much else other than like watching YouTube links of all these films to remind ourselves of what the scenes were.
It's been very productive.
So kind of playing off of Cool as Ice with like motorcycle scenes that are unrealistic. Can we talk about Torque for a second? Like I want to make sure that we hit Torque before we go any further.
I think it's important when you talk about bad motorcycle movies. I think there's at least in my mind, there's a distinction. You've got movies that just have kind of bad writing as in motorcycle riding, and like the scenes are unrealistic, but they take themselves very seriously, and they're like trying to play it off. I mean, I guess Cool as Ice is kind of like that, but the point is there are some motorcycle scenes that are so bad that they're good, and essentially that's the entire Torque movie. Is the whole thing is so awful and so ridiculous that you almost can't be mad at it, because it's like come full circle to almost being good again.
So if you haven't seen Torque and you're listening to this podcast, do yourself a favor, rent it or watch it. It's probably free or cheap somewhere.
They will pay you to watch it.
You can probably find it at the bottom of a dumpster behind a CVS somewhere.
Well, I had a note in here too, because like right along with Torque is there's a movie called I think Supercross, and I put a note that like I remember paying 99 cents at a Blockbuster because it was in the bargain bin, and I'm like, I overpaid. I paid too much. But so Torque is about sport bike riders that get slighted, and then there's two rivals, and I think there's like a drug cartel and a bad cop that's like corrupt.
I think it came out not long after the first Fast and the Furious, and you can feel the producers having a meeting and giving this pitch like, okay, it's going to be like Fast and the Furious but with bikes. It's going to be the same but with bikes. It's like that but with bikes. And then they did it, and that's fairly accurate, except somehow I think they almost beat Fast and the Furious to the punch. Like what Fast and the Furious is now, where there are like rocket cars and they're going to outer space and everything defies the laws of physics. Well, Torque was ahead of its time, because that's really what they were all about way back when.
Dude, the scene, I think, Spencer, I think you were the one that mentioned this the other day, but I think, there's so many bad scenes in that movie. Like at one point, like I think, it was Ice Cube, right? Ice Cube was the one character in that movie. He puts the cell phone up to his helmet, and like the cell phone automatically sticks to his helmet, and he can talk to him, and he like gives it back to his boy. Like it's a whole thing. But the scene that takes the cake is in Palm Desert, or yeah, and there's like all the palm trees, and they're fight, like the bikes are like sword fighting each other. Right?
Yeah,
like,
there's a bike karate. I don't remember it being the desert. I remember it being in like a sort of like industrial part of this. It's been a while also since I've seen
it's
that.
like under an overpass or something maybe.
Yeah,
but what was?
The bikes are like kung fuing each other.
So then, what was the scene where there's like all the palm trees and they're riding through the trees and they're riding them like dirt bikes? Because that was in that movie too.
That might be Biker Boys.
No, I'm pretty sure it's in Torque. And I want to.
No, Spurgeon just watched Torque.
No, I don't. But Chase is over here, much like Cool as Ice. He's literally like he's putting these notes up, jumps onto train. Like,
any questions?
He's such a fan of this movie. But no, there was definitely a scene in there where there was palm trees and they were like riding through the palm trees like these sport bikes or motocross bikes.
I can picture the scene. I couldn't remember if that was Biker Boys or if that was Torque. But yeah, I think the thing with that scene though is there was probably some actually decent stunt riding there, because I don't remember that being a super CG heavy scene. And I think that's one of the unfortunate things about bad motorcycle movies, is that bad motorcycle movies still often require the efforts and services of very talented motorcycle stunt riders. So even if you have just like a super awful cheesy motorcycle movie where they're like riding whatever Hayabusas through the desert off-road through palm trees, there was still an actual guy that had to do that, which is pretty commendable. But yeah, they do that and then they put like a two-stroke sound beneath it, and you're like, does that Hayabusa sound like a two-stroke? I'm very confused on a number of levels.
Audio is like a whole nother pet peeve of mine in I don't know if you guys looked in our document, but I'm like the audio's all over the map here. Like it sounds like a Harley when it's supposed to be this other thing, and like this is a two-stroke.
You're also like the Rain Man of bike noises, though. You'll be like, no, I think it's a little tinny, but it's it's okay. It's okay.
Zach had a suggestion for, I don't remember if it was like going to be an episode of Highside, Lowside, or he wanted to do his own series, but he wanted to go out to a canyon road and just sit on the side of the road and listen for motorcycles going by. And like the whole point of the show is that we have to guess what engine it is before it gets to us. So
yeah. It's like you play horse. With so you hear a bike coming and you say like, I think that's a whatever, and then if you get it wrong you get a letter, and then whoever spells horse or pig first loses.
This is a window into like 75-year-old retired Zach just like sitting in a lawn chair on the side of Mulholland
like
with
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, exactly, being like parallel twin 270 degree, nice.
Exactly. I think that's accurate.
And then you roll by you roll by in a Versys and he's just like, oh.
On my electric Versys, and he'll be like, ooh.
Exactly. Yeah, if that's what I have to look forward to, that sounds great. I'm down for that retirement.
So
okay, okay, go ahead.
I want to get into so many more things, and I'm going to let you take the next one. But let's take a break for Motul. All right, so sorry about the interruption, Zach. I just want to make sure we hit that. But why don't you go ahead? Take it away with the next one you want to hit on.
Okay, what I wanted to say is we've been talking a lot about bad motorcycle. We talked about Cool as Ice. We talked about Torque. These are obviously cringeworthy motorcycling moments on the silver screen.
Chase is shaking his head no.
Cool as Ice, contender for best scene of all time. So let's pivot to good motorcycle, like inspiring, interesting, memorable, good motorcycle scenes. Spencer, what comes to mind? And you can't say Top Gun because we already talked about that.
Good motorcycle scenes. Well, this is also tricky because sometimes there are good motorcycle scenes in movies that I don't necessarily like. I mean, frankly, the movie Chips, the Chips remake that came out a few years ago that was written and directed and was starring Dax Shepard, like the motorcycle riding in that movie was legitimately good. And I think that makes sense because as far as I understand it, he's a motorcycle enthusiast. And I mean, not only was the stunt riding very impressive, but the sounds were good. And the, just like the general choreography of where they were riding the bikes and how they were jumping them and how they were used. It was like, I just remember sitting in the theater being like, oh, that was just really well done. It looked cool. They did actual real stunts with real bikes. No green screen, no CGI. So I have a lot of love for that sort of thing.
So Spencer and I saw Chips together.
I would say Dak Shepard is top on my list of who I want to join us in the podcast. So let's just make sure we're only saying nice things about Dak Shepard. So keep it going, Zach.
Yeah. Well, Spencer and I saw Chips together, which is a a small window into our friendship, I suppose. But there's one scene in particular. I don't know if you remember this, Spencer, but there's a scene where it's a chase and they're on. The characters are on BMW R1200 RTs, I think, RTPs. So the RT police bike, which is like a freaking 600 something pound bike as it is, and then it's covered in machine guns. I mean, it's a touring bike. And
by the way, the LAPD all have machine guns on there.
I mean, I think you mean like luggage. I think it was luggage. I don't think it was machine guns.
I'm just imagining a turret gun.
Quote me.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Exactly, a Gatling gun. So anyway, whatever. It's all covered in equipment and stuff. And it's a chase scene, and someone takes off like up a grassy hill, and the stunt rider goes up the hill on this RT and gets so flippin' Swayze. Like the bike is sideways and it's all swapped out. And I remember Spencer and I were in the theater, and that was a moment we were both just like, holy Moses. Because if you ride motorcycles, you can see like being sideways on a grassy hill on a touring bike is probably one of the sketchiest places you can be, aside from halfway through a backflip. It's just shockingly good stunt riding, to Spencer's point.
No, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that was literally the most memorable scene in that movie to me, because I remember my butt was puckering watching it, because he was like all over that hill trying to keep up with like the Ducati.
So you were sort of partway through a thought, though, Spencer. You said that that is some memorable riding in a movie that you didn't necessarily love, but like the riding was good.
So I mean, I think the nice thing about Chips is there was a lot of riding, and the stunt work and the filming for the riding was all great. On the flip side, I think you've got something like, I think The Great Escape is an easy one to point out. And the similarity, if I'm gonna connect the dots between Chips and Great Escape, is that. Similar situation, Steve McQueen, actual motorcyclist, actually into bikes, actually helping design what those scenes look like, and figuring out the stunts. And I think it's sometimes it feels like that's what you need someone on set who that is their jam. Otherwise, you have a bunch of people who are just like, I think this is what motorcycles do, and if you're into motorcycles, then you can pick up on that immediately.
Yep. First of all, The Great Escape, he doesn't actually escape. He jumps.
Whoa! Spoiler alert!
He
Holy
jumps.
Cow!
Yes, there's a cool motorcycle jump, and like that's what the cover is of the DVD, and like it's just like that's what people remember that movie for. But he only gets over the first fence, and then he crashes into a pile of barbed wire, and the Germans catch him again. So like. I don't get it. It should have been called like the great crash into a barbed wire fence after the first jump.
The great momentary escape.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Spurgeon, this is your opportunity to say, if he had been on a KTM instead of a Triumph, maybe he would have cleared that second fence. So that's
actually a really good point, because he was escaping from a German POW camp. Why was he on a Triumph to begin with? He should have been on a BMW.
Well, they did paint it to look like a German bike. I think it was just like
all
it was what
German
they had,
bikes were military green at the time. Like, come on.
Well, they tried a little bit.
Maybe it was a bike that they had captured. Yeah, there's a funny there's a funny kind of tie-in that we've mentioned on the podcast before, where the stunt rider who's associated with Motorcyclist magazine actually. Spencer and I had done a little bit of like history and research on that fella and his brother. But anyway,
Bud Eakins.
That's right. Yeah, it's not just some fella. It was Bud Eakins. Yeah,
Bud Eakins. Right. We did an interview with Dave Eakins. Right.
Yep.
And anyway, whatever. So the point is, the essentially what happened there, why he's riding a Triumph, even though it's supposed to be a German bike, was that, as far as I understand it, they were like, yeah, you have to jump this BMW over a barbed wire fence, and he was like, yeah, that's not happening. Like I need something that can be scramblerized, like BMWs of that era there were no GSs yet. He was like, no, sir. So I gotta use something I can do that on. So it had to be a Triumph.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been able to do it with a GS anyway.
He was probably thinking, I needed at least 30, 35 horsepower to really get this.
And like 4 inches of suspension travel.
Yeah, exactly. You nuts?
Well, that was the big thing, and it goes back to the legitimacy you're talking about with Steve McQueen. But Steve McQueen was friends with Bud Eakins, and those guys raced in the desert together. And that was a time when like a desert dirt bike was 5 inches of suspension travel on a parallel twin that you got out of England. Like,
I think they raced that exact I mean, not the exact bike, but the exact model, the whatever, like the TR6 trophy.
TR650 trophy.
Yeah, they raced that at ISDT. Steve McQueen, Bud Eakins, Dave Eakins, and a couple other guys raced it at ISDT like the next year. So that was, I mean, I think to your point, it was legitimately the kind of best option they had for that sort of riding at the time, or at least they thought it was.
Yeah,
and,
no, I mean, it was.
And in the context of motorcycle movies, Spurgeon has got a sourpuss about the fact that he didn't escape, but that's a pretty cool scene. I mean,
it was, yeah,
jumping the barbed wire fence, and like trying to get away, and I don't know.
But they actually showed it too. Like, it was so legitimate. Like, you talk about like the CG and stuff that you see in movies now. Like, you watch him do it, and they show the jump, and he does it on an angle, and like it's a genuine barbed wire fence. Like, it's it's a legit scene. I will give it that.
No, yeah, they're like, they didn't cut away. They didn't like use 3 or 4 angles. It was just one long wide shot, and they pan with him, and he jumps over. And when he lands, you think, yeah, that looks really uncomfortable, and then he continues on his merry way. And I think the other, I mean, that's kind of goes back to my feeling that CGI has done a lot of bad for motorcycling in movies, because it allows filmmakers to say like, oh, well, like no rules, we can do anything we want with a motorcycle and it'll be cool. But the reason it was cool in The Great Escape is because you realize somebody had to actually do it, and there wasn't a bunch of fanfare. There weren't explosions in the background. He wasn't soaring 200 feet in the air. It was just like one single stunt done for real, done very well, and I hope people will do more of that.
Yes, sure enough. Go ahead, Spurge.
No, I just wanted to tie in. So another pick that I had down here that ties in with everything that we're talking about, and it talks about, it speaks to the legitimacy of this. It speaks to the lack of CGI. I don't think that Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade gets enough credit. If you go back and you watch the scene where Indiana Jones and Sean Connery are I like that Indiana Jones wasn't Harrison Ford. Where Harrison Ford and Sean Connery are escaping on the motorcycle. Watch the German soldiers that are following him, and like watch their riding. It's impressively good. And there's no special effects. Like, they're literally doing all of this with a motorcycle, which I thought was an amazing scene in motorcycling.
They did do the thing where I think I don't know if I remember this correctly, but Harrison Ford like sticks a stick in the guy's spokes.
It wasn't a stick. Then he takes the gate post down and like grabs it, and like this giant wooden thing breaks off in his hand.
yeah, which is whatever. But yeah, when we talk about special effects, I like that he like puts a stick in the guy's spokes, and the bike explodes like 40 feet in the air, like you just hit a landmine, which is obviously a little bit unrealistic, but it's shocking though.
I'm curious, Zach, if how's the sidecar technique in that movie? Because I feel like father son in a sidecar, like that's basically your childhood, right? Just fighting Nazis in a sidecar.
Yeah, my dad and I raced a BMW sidecar together. So really, that should have been the movie that we watched all the time, I guess, because that we would have been like, this is us. My dad also does not look totally dissimilar from Sean Connery, so there's some, and I obviously look very similar to Harrison Ford. So
most people say that you are a young Harrison Ford.
Yeah. There's a couple things with that. As far as a realism standpoint, like the idea that solo motorcycles would have trouble keeping up with a sidecar in any capacity is pretty silly, because sidecars are so slow and useless when it comes to like actually going around a racetrack or like trying to go quickly in any way. And not to knock a legend, but Sean Connery's technique in the sidecar wasn't great. You could have been leaning more. You could have been doing a little bit, you could have helped the ballast a little bit, really lean out in those corners and get through those curves. But one thing I will say, that maybe my favorite part of that scene, sort of like unsung favorite part of that scene, is where Indiana Jones like explodes that guy and like jousts the guy off, and like he's like wrecking people's day left and right, and he's super proud of himself, and he looks over at Sean Connery. And he's just sort of like aghast at what has just happened, like he's sort of like, I just killed that guy, and he looks over and his dad's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, what are you doing? You know, and he sort of immediately has this like guilt on his face of like, oh yeah, I guess it was pretty. I don't know. Sorry about that.
That's honestly,
which, again,
it's one of
I
my
can relate
favorite.
to.
It's one of my favorite Sean Connery roles of all time. Like that whole movie, because like earlier before they escape, it's the same thing. He like grabs the one German's gun from him and he shoots them all. And Sean Connery's like, "What did you do? You killed them all." And he's just like, "Come on, Dad, we gotta go." So yeah, I
kill people all the time.
Right. They hadn't seen each other in like 10 years, and they finally catch up, and he just starts murdering people in front of his dad. And he's like, "Do you love me now?"
I figured that's a real Court's family Christmas is what it's like.
Right. And yeah, I should say, when I say I can relate to that feeling, I can't relate to killing people on a motorcycle and then seeing my dad's disapproval. That's not what I meant. But when you're in a sidecar with someone, not yet, exactly. When you're in a sidecar with someone, you often have these moments of sort of looking at them and saying, when you're racing anyway, was that my fault or was that your fault? And hopefully someone says like, that was my fault. And then the other person can say, okay, cool. Just making sure, because that was a hairy situation.
So you're not talking about the fact that your father is constantly disappointed in you.
Well, that could be too. My dad just raced a sidecar last weekend. Actually, what day is it? Thursday. My dad
without
raced,
you?
Without me? Can you believe it? I know. And did
he do it with Sean Connery?
Creeping, maybe
from the
dream team.
Creeping up on 70 years old, and he's still.
Isn't Sean Connery dead?
He is.
Okay, I was just
so
making
that
sure.
is a way. That's a way that my dad is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a way that my dad is different than Sean Connery, fortunately. So, moving on. I don't want to forget to talk about this movie because Spenser brought it up. We had talked about this before. I don't remember why, but the Buster Keaton motorcycle scene is
Sherlock
what's the name
Jr.
of the movie? Sherlock Jr. Thank you.
1924, people, 100 years ago, basically, and. Yeah, Spurgeon, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the clip or anything.
No, I haven't seen this one. It wasn't. I didn't see it. It must not have been there when I was going through.
Yeah,
what do you got?
maybe again to Zach's point, a clip will play and people can see what this looks like. But it's really unbelievable. I mean, Buster Keaton was obviously very famous for doing all sorts of stunts and being really clever with camera tricks to create these action scenes in silent movies.
Chase is playing it for me right now. So while you guys are talking, I'm actually watching.
Spenser will describe it and you can watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder which one will be better. It's basically, for those of you who haven't seen it, the shtick is that it's sort of a dream sequence, but Buster Keaton's character is a detective. He's like chasing these guys down who have kidnapped a girl, and he gets a ride from another police officer, and he sits on the handlebars. The police officer is riding the bike, and then they go through a little bump, and the police officer actually riding the bike falls off the back. So Buster Keaton is just on the handlebars of the motorcycle, and the shtick is that he doesn't know the police officer fell off the back. So he's just like, oh boy, we're really going fast here. And you see the bike go through this insane sequence of events where it's like, riding over the top of like box cars as they're like moving over a gap in a bridge, and like going through mud puddles and like, getting dirt thrown on him and going off road. And it's just
and like
absolutely
weaving in traffic and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the shots, again, they're wide shots. You can see that someone is actually piloting, and by someone, Buster Keaton, like legitimately doing all of his own stunts, as far as I understand, like operating the bike from the handlebars, weaving it back and forth, intentionally making it look sketchy so that it's more exciting on screen. And yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things that when you think about the bike of that era and how they had to actually operate and do something like that, it's super impressive.
I think it would be impressive to do that today. Like if I like just watching the scene that Chase was showing me, like if you were to say, hey, we want you to go reenact this, I'd be like, no.
I mean, any one of the three of us probably couldn't even ride a bike from 1924 if someone gave it to. If they're like, here's a motorcycle from 1924, go ahead and start it and ride it.
Start it.
Yeah.
Right.
And we would be like, I don't know how to do this. And yeah, he was, to Spenser's point, he was sitting on the handlebars, like weaving in between cars and like the whole time doing this whole goofy thing where he's like, wow, you sure are a good rider, and there's no one on the bike. It's just terrific.
One of my favorite anecdotes from that scene is that apparently Buster Keaton, so he also directed the movie, so director, star, also into motorcycles. So we're noticing a theme here with good motorcycle scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of my favorite anecdotes is that the shot where the police officer falls off the back of the bike, apparently Buster Keaton also did that stunt because no one else was able to do it. So not only did he do all the stunts where he's on the front of the bike, but for the one shot they got of someone falling backwards off a motorcycle and landing in a mud puddle, he also did that. So he's like basically playing every role, doing every stunt in the scene, which is just so impressive.
he's the guy in the community theater production that's like just tying the whole thing together.
Yeah.
He's playing all the major roles and
doing it all. I want to ask you guys. This is your podcast. I don't want to
Easy does it there.
Grab the talking pillow. But I feel like we've talked a lot about narrative movies, and the truth is narrative movies are more often miss than hit when it comes to motorcycles. But there are definitely some seminal, very iconic, like documentary motorcycle movies. And I think the obvious one, of course, is On Any Sunday. But I just wanted to kind of open that area for conversation. Like, were there any movies you guys watched growing up that were documentaries about motorcycles or something like that where you're like, oh man, I want to do that when I can?
Yeah. I mean, I'll go first. On Any Sunday is the one that I would say, because I watched that I don't know how many times when I was a kid. And like I was whatever, 6, 8, 10, 12 years old, whatever, like watching that movie again and again and again and again and again. And the first scene, if you guys remember, is kids riding bicycles, like in a race. It's like kids in Southern California on these like banana seat bicycles, and they're like, they take off together and they've all got number plates on, and they like hit a jump and then they like slide through a sandy corner. And I mean, this is just like, it was going straight to my cortex. I mean, this is exactly what I was putting number plates on my bicycle and I was jumping them in my front yard and I was pretending that I had friends to ride around with. And this is what happens when you're an only child on a 35-acre farm in the middle of Vermont. Yeah, exactly. Or, around that time. But yeah, like I was doing all of those things, and to have motorcycle professionals, it was the first time that I really thought about that professional motorcycle racers are people, and also people are motorcyclists. All walks of life are motorcyclists. It was just like it opened up a world that I would never have known about.
It made the world of motorcycling so much bigger, because I think even for me, like I was into dirt bikes as a kid, and then all of a sudden you see these people doing flat track and road racing and just like
ice
all
racing.
Of a sudden the whole paradigm of motorcycling exploded for me, and I was just like, wow. So like the thing that I like doing, there's just way more of it than I ever dreamed.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, Spurge, I assume you've never seen it.
For me, it was a combination of a couple things. One, and this goes back to Zach's point. Like, Zach was a lonely Vermont kid. I was in Pennsylvania, and I was very much
with
the
lots
same thing
of friends.
No, I did not. But I had my bicycle. But I think 3 things happened. On Any Sunday played a role in that. I got a book from the library in elementary school, and it was a book about like mini bikes and mini bike racing. And it was written in like the 70s, and I checked out this book like every other week. I would just like, I wish I could find it. I've actually since like Googled like mini bike child's book, and I haven't been able to find it. And then a little bit later was, actually On Any Sunday probably came last in this triage trio. But Karate Kid, right? So Karate Kid comes out, and I know that they're the bad guys, but Karate Kid comes out, and all these kids in high school in California have dirt bikes. So I'm reading a book about mini bikes when I'm in like 3rd grade, about like California has all these little mini bike tracks, and like kids in California get mini bikes they ride around. And then I watched the Karate Kid, and like if you're in high school, you get to ride a dirt bike around. Like, yeah, it's a 650, but it's fun. And then like On Any Sunday comes out, and it's all about like how great California is, and look at what California. And I'm like, what is this place called California?
Yeah.
Like
land of milk and honey.
The kids all get mini bikes.
They all fight karate. They ride motorcycles. This is paradise.
And
everybody's beautiful.
They're all so handsome and pretty. Like, oh my Lord. So I think for me, it was this trio of things or images of whether it was books or movies where I was like, well, that's what I thought high school was going to be like. and much like Saved by the Bell, like I got to high school and like I didn't get an AC Slater. I'm assuming that I'm Zach in the Saved by the Bell, but like I didn't get an AC Slater. I didn't have a Screech sidekick. I didn't have a Kelly Kapowski. Like, so I feel like there were all these movies that I watched up until middle school where I was like, man, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, and it's
been all downhill.
Yeah, ever since.
it just didn't. Spurgeon's psychology session aside, I think the whole like motorcycle documentaries is a good thing to bring up. So what else? I know there's some other. I mean, for me, Faster was that's sort of
Faster
like
was
the
top of
modern
my
version
list,
of On Any Sunday, because it was such a great encapsulation of the type of motorcycle racing that I care most about. But do you have one, Spencer, that comes to mind?
Oh, I mean, you road racers, Supercross, yeah. You road racers. Obviously, Faster is great, and hitting the apex. There's a lot of great road racing documentaries, especially within the last 20 years that I think have come out. But for me, basically, I think the only movie I watched more than Dumb and Dumber when I was a kid was a little flick called Steel Roots. If there are any Steel Roots fans out there, then yeah.
Is that a Bob Marley film?
No, it's
Steel
a Jeremy.
drums.
Oh, sorry.
Jeremy McGrath. It was a dirt bike. It's kind of hard to describe. It was it wasn't really about anything. It was just sort of like this probably 60-minute hype reel of awesome dirt bike riding, a lot of free riding. But it had like all of the coolest, best riders of the era. It was Jeremy McGrath, Jimmy Button, Jeff Emig, and they. I think that was, for me, being whatever 8 or 9 years old, I was like, that is the life that I want to live. They just go do dope dirt bike jumps, and then they get in there. Like, they have a scene with rental cars where they just thrash these rental cars.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Off road, just completely destroy them. It had an unbelievably good soundtrack. I think it was the opening song was Megadeth Symphony of Destruction.
Yes, Megadeth's Symphony of Destruction. We can talk
like
Megadeth. That's a whole separate podcast if you want to get into Megadeth.
But genuinely, when I hear that song now, like occasionally I'll just it'll come on the radio, or I'll be somewhere at someone's house and they play it, and I'm immediately transported to being 8 years old and just looking at Jeremy McGrath doing this sick knack, being like, yes, that is the pinnacle of humanity.
If you're friends with the kind of people that are playing Megadeth at parties, I want to come hang out with your friends, because it sounds like we're the same kind of people.
By friends at parties, I mean I'm in a truck with my brother, who I think just has that on repeat.
Spurgeon's still never been to California, so one of these days maybe he can come and hang out.
I still believe it's the land of milk and honey. I truly am there.
It is. I had milk and honey for breakfast. So what about Dust to Glory?
Yeah,
that I remember that being an awesome off-road documentary.
Yeah, and certainly for people who don't know, that was I believe that was directed by is it Dana Brown?
Oh yeah, you're right. I think you're right.
The son of Bruce Brown, who directed On Any Sunday. So
Correct.
it has a lot of the sort of spirit of On Any Sunday. But the reason I like Dust to Glory more than, say, On Any Sunday 2, which I think Dana Brown also directed, is that it was something new. It was different. It wasn't trying to do exactly what On Any Sunday had done originally. It was let's focus on this one event that covers a spectrum of motorsports and tell the stories of the crazy people that participate in Baja. So agreed. I remember seeing that. And then for me as a filmmaker, that was, especially interested in motorcycling, I think that was one of the movies that blew my mind, because I was just like, I didn't know you could shoot motorcycles and make them look that awesome, because it was HD and whatever, it was probably 2004 or something.
But I think Dust to Glory, but I think, going back to, On Any Sunday, I think from a filmmaker's perspective, the fact that they really revolutionized how to get some of these shots, that was the other big thing with those movies, is that it really was trying to figure out how to capture some of this stuff and put it to film.
Yeah, they must have had really old GoPros or something, right?
Yeah, that's what it was.
The memory cards must have been massive. Yeah, I mean, some of the photos, there were photos behind the scenes of how they shot the helmet cam stuff.
Oh, dude.
And I think you watch it and you think, oh, they must have had some really just clever, very streamlined system, but it looks like they just duct tape, a 16 millimeter camera to somebody's helmet and say, all right, Bob, go for it. Yeah.
Well, I know that I've talked about that. I've talked about Cycles South a lot in the past, and the one clip that I put in there was really just the first 15 minutes of the movie. But I know that I've done some research, and I think it was actually in some of the clips where and for those of you listening, Cycle South is kind of in my opinion, it's a better version of Easy Rider. It came out at the same time. It's probably a year or two after Easy Rider, but it's three friends that get some, British bikes, and they decide they're going to ride down to South America, and they bring somebody along to film it. And there's only one person filming the whole thing that rides along with them. But it was the same thing where they showed some clips of this person trying to ride with this giant camera rig on, and they're riding off road and they're going through the mountains and everything else. And to me, it's how they were able to capture this and document it at a time when everything was reel to reel. I think is super impressive.
When men were men.
They also got away with some stuff.
Oh yeah.
They introduced the guy. They're like, this guy followed us. He drinks too much, and they like show him like drinking as he's riding. Basically, like he's on this motorcycle that's all covered in stuff, which is unsafe, and he's like literally drinking a beer as he rides. It's like just hilariously.
They were talking about riding off road at one point, and they're like, riding off road is great because you have wide open spaces, and you're not going to get hit by some woman. And it was just like, oh wow.
My God.
You know, the like misogynistic
Ridiculous.
and you know, like DUI stuff aside, though, I hadn't seen it until you put it on my radar, and it's pretty fun. It's it blurs the line between documentary and narrative filmmaking in my mind, because it is a documentary. Like they're saying, we are these guys, and we're going on the strip down to I think they're going to Panama Canal or something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they also clearly stage scenes and script scenes, and you know, there's voiceover throughout the entire thing, so it has this very fun you know, kind of video journal kind of feeling about it, and you're like, you actually feel like you are on the trip with them, which is a pretty cool sensation.
Yeah, but then there was also like realistic moments where like the bike breaks down in Mexico, and they decide to trade all the bikes in on these little Kawasaki 125s, and like that's what they end up using to finish the rest of the trip. There was like the one scene where like the one guy did actually crash, and like the bike, you didn't realize it, but like the bike was on like the edge of this like cliff in Colorado, I think it was. Like it was just it's an interesting look back. Now there's definitely some cheeseball moments. Like there's like a whole, you know, spaced out drug scene where they're all taking, you know, psychedelics in the middle of the desert, which kind of harkens back to like the Easy Rider aspect of things. But like if you can get past certain, you know, aspect, I mean, it was like 1971, so like things were a little bit different, but
so
there were some good
ones. I'm gonna pitch you guys here. The next CTXP episode, there were 3 main writers and then 1 camera guy. So you two plus Ari. I need to start forming a little bit more of an alcoholic habit, because I don't have one currently. But I say we just recreate it. You know, like we'll do the Dumb and Dumber thing all over again. We'll go from Denver, Colorado to Panama. I have to be drunk the whole time. You guys have to. You guys have to, you know,
and you have to shoot it. You have to shoot it with a real camera. We'll get you like the old camcorder from your parents' basement that they shot all like the Christmas videos on, and
Perfect.
That's what you'll have to record the whole thing on. Yeah, I think it's interesting though, because like a lot of the stuff that they did in that film, they wouldn't be able to do today. Like a lot of the places where they rode off road, and then like some of the spearfishing and stuff that they did, like I don't think you could probably get away with most of that.
They're like on a highway somewhere, and they just take a left and just go off into the woods. And I mean, who knows if they were actually allowed to do it then? But it definitely did have. It made me long for that period. I mean, they were right on the train tracks, and there's like these unbelievable scenic vistas of like going over these. You know, like really severe train tracks over bridges and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, that looks great. It looks, frankly, it did feel a lot like what CTXP episodes feel like sometimes. You're just like out in the boonies with a few motorcycles and a camera and trying to make something of it.
So I understand that there's seeing the stack of paper on my desk right now and like all the ideas that we have to talk about. We're probably going to have to do another one of these because we are getting to the end of our time here. But I wanted to give Spenser one last opportunity to give us your final pick. Like, and you can go in any direction you want. You can give it any categorization you want. But like, what's your final pick that you want to talk about with us today?
I'm trying to think if there's something we haven't covered. I mean, honestly, if
look at the stack of paper, man. There's plenty of stuff we haven't covered.
There's plenty of stuff we haven't covered, but like a movie that feels like it was truly seminal enough in my life that's what I want to go out with. And I think the truth is, I probably did not watch any motorcycle scene more as a kid than the one in Dumb and Dumber, and so it's no surprise that that's why eventually we went and made that CTXP episode about recreating the trip. And hopefully when people watch that video, if they have watched it, they can tell how much everyone that was on that production, Zach, Ari, myself, our camera operator Andrew, like we all just loved that movie so much, and it was legitimately a dream come true to basically pitch it to you and Brett and be like, hey, can we spend the money and the time to go recreate the road trip from Dumb and Dumber and have Zach and Ari build the bike? Like, I mean, all of that, if you told 8 or 9 year old Spenser that's what someone would pay him to do, at least for a couple weeks one year, then I think my head would have exploded. So it's not a traditional motorcycle movie, but it was definitely probably the one that had the biggest impact on me when I was a kid.
The only thing that I was disappointed with that is that like I really wanted to dress up like Seabass and like get the, but I wanted to get the van. I wanted to figure out if we could find the recreation of the van. And for the record, like I did look, I couldn't find one that was anything near affordable. But I thought it would have been great at the end if I would have just like pulled up as Seabass and been like, "Hop in, boys." It was really well done. For those of you out there that haven't seen it, do take the time to watch the most recent episode of CTXP. Spenser is the man, the myth, the legend behind all of these CTXP episodes. He's the unsung hero, if you will. I think the only episode that we've seen you in so far was the Himalayan versus the CXC. Is it CX? No, CSC, where they turned it around and you were on a Honda.
I wasn't actually in that shot, though there is, I think Zach mentions me in that episode where I accidentally sent them down a ravine, and Zach said something along the lines of, if the cameraman knew that this was a dead end, I'm going to tear his head off. So that happens a lot. It doesn't always make it into the episode, but we did keep that moment.
You were in the Christmas trees on ADVs?
Oh, yeah. I helped Barry.
Yes. It didn't have to help Barry pick up a motorcycle, but you did help.
No, he's not very strong, so I had to help him out.
He skipped the leg day. Well,
if you want to see Spenser pick up a motorcycle, you can check that out.
Yeah, go to minute 15 and watch me lift a motorcycle.
No, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join us. I kind of manage you, so I cleared your calendar for you.
So I had to do this.
Yeah, you didn't have a choice. But I want to thank you for making it seem like you were a willing participant in this. But we've obviously got a stack more movies, so we should do this again sometime. And Agreed. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Thanks guys. I appreciate it.
So hopefully you enjoyed having Spenser on the program. I always enjoy getting to talk to him. I think you can easily see why he's the perfect person to be producing all of the episodes that he does, because he's got a true love for it. Yeah,
he does. He's been into movies and motorcycles for as long as he can remember. So it's basically the perfect combination of sort of like skills and interests for the job that he has. And I think we're lucky because CTXP is all of our programming on all the original content that we do in the West Coast team or that he's involved with is better for it. But especially CTXP, where he really gets to kind of dive in and do that kind of thing. The only other thing that I would like to say really quick is that please don't send us an email or leave a comment on Apple Podcasts that says, you forgot to talk about The Matrix Reloaded. You didn't talk about any Jackie Chan movies. You forgot to talk about the James Bond movie. We know that we didn't talk about this. Was not meant to be a comprehensive list of bikes and movies. We know there's tons more to talk about. And hopefully we'll have a chance to do that and dive into, we wanted to talk about actors and actresses that ride and that kind of thing. But whatever. There's so much more to talk about. Hopefully we'll do it again. But please don't assume that we forgot about movies. We have an enormous list, and if you feel like there's one that might fly under our radar, feel free to chime in and let us know for next time. But in the meantime, promise we know there's more.
Any excuse to bring Spenser back on is the way that I look at this. So we want to leave it open-ended to be able to have him come and join us again. And I did like when we're like, so other than a Versys 650, what bikes do you like? He's like, MT-07. And I was like, it's kind of the same, right? Like,
he likes what he likes. So you can't blame him for that.
Let's go ahead and we're going to jump into our Highside, Lowside viewers/listeners comments. And the first comment comes in from Carlos. And again, we collect these comments. These are folks that send in emails to Highside, Lowside at RevZilla.com. These are folks that leave comments on the YouTube channel, but mostly they are folks that shoot us an email. So this email came in from Carlos. And he says, hello there. I am Carlos from Spain. Hello, Carlos from Spain. He has just started listening to the podcast, and he says, I hardly ever hear you mention Honda. A lot of KTM, Harley Davidson, Kawasaki, etc., but hardly anything about Honda. Is it because Honda's instrument displays suck? No TFT, no connectivity? Is Honda getting outdated? Zach?
Wow. Very cool that you're watching, listening from Spain, Carlos. First of all, appreciate that. Sounds like Carlos is new to the Highside, Lowside ecosystem, so this is probably why we just haven't mentioned Honda in the ones that he's listened to. But we just want to take this opportunity to be very clear. There is no hierarchy. We joke about Spurgeon loving KTMs, and we have fun with that. But the truth is, we're brand agnostic here. Like, we have stuff we like, stuff we don't like, but we're not gonna not talk about Honda because we think they're crappy or because they didn't advertise with this or like that. That doesn't. We don't do that at all. It doesn't matter. We never have any consideration like that. If you think that we haven't talked about a bike for some nefarious reason, that's not the case. We promise. There's absolutely nothing going on there. We're not leaving anyone out for any reason.
And for the record, I don't think Hondas are crappy. I think, first of all, they do have, TFT. Do they not have TFT displays? They have TFT displays, don't they?
There's some TFTs, yeah.
Yeah,
fewer than other bikes.
Yeah,
Carlos is right. They're a little behind.
There's some connectivity. They've got Apple CarPlay on the Goldwing. There's things like that. I do think that, Honda's got, a different approach to the motorcycles they create. But like, I've owned Hondas. I like Honda. So yeah, it may be just a coincidence that Carlos hasn't heard Honda come up. Zach.
So next comment. Greetings from Austria. We always get a European theme here. I didn't even realize that. This is Matthias from Austria. Says, I ride a Suzuki GSF 600S, and I really like this style of bike. Wanted to ask you what you think the future of sport touring bikes looks like from a technical and market standpoint. Matthias, being Austrian, goes on to say, I hope you're doing well and have a nice day, which I think is a dead giveaway that he wasn't American. But anyway, the point is, this is a good question. Basically, what sport touring bikes, to give Matthias's comment some context here, Honda has, the ST1300 sport touring bike isn't really a thing anymore. Ducati doesn't make the ST4 or whatever it was. They stopped making that a while ago. Yamaha's FJ 1300 is not something they really talk about much. Kawasaki's Concourse, something they don't really talk about that much. So what do you make of this, Spurge?
I think, as someone that had a Honda VFR for years, I like the idea of what a sport touring bike that leans a little bit more towards the sports side represented. But I think as adventure bikes have really become more popular, that's the future of sport touring. You can put a massive amount of luggage on it. It can pretty much go anywhere you want to go. It's a very sporty machine. And that's why you're seeing bikes like S1000 XR, Ducati Multistrada. Now, arguably the Multistrada is kind of shifted a little bit more towards the GS side of the picture. But you have a lot of these more Versys 1000 was a bike that I know you just rode. I rode it last year. There's a lot of these bikes that, to Spencer's point, Versys 650, a little bit more of a mid-size sport touring bike. But that's really where I see the future of sport touring going.
That's the correct answer. That's the, hopefully you're still listening. Matthias, this is a long podcast, but hopefully you're still with us. And that's the answer to your question. Adventure touring bikes are picking up that torch to carry it. That's, Honda's Africa Twin Adventure Sports is sort of marketed as a gnarly around the world bike, but that's their sport touring bike at this point, really. If you don't, Goldwing is too much for you. It's too, plaid pants and white shoes and, Florida retirement community for you. You can get an Africa Twin. You look a little bit more rugged, arguably, but you still get a big TFT dash. You get the connectivity, you get comfort, you get range, you get all that stuff. That's what that bike is really, even though it has a 21-inch front wheel. And I think what we're going to start seeing, interestingly, is a split in that category, because I think people assume, people see a Multistrada V4, they see a Versys 1000, they see an S1000 XR, they think, oh, those bikes are all basically the same. That's a kind of the same, similar price, similar thing that they're going for. But those bikes are really, really different in ways that maybe is a whole nother podcast, frankly. But the point is that's where that class is going, and that's what people are growing into, because that's what the market's dictating.
I think that's the most authoritative answer you've ever said. When I was done explaining it, you're like, that's the correct answer. And I was like, well, I was just saying that's my opinion. And you're like, no, that is the right answer. So I'm glad you took a stand.
When you're right, Spurgeon Dunbar.
I'm glad you took a stand.
Yeah. So, Highside, Lowside, comment number 3, final comment for this episode is from Chris, who has this is a very interesting, do you want to take this one? I think it's your turn.
You go for it. No, we don't. We don't have to be equal. We can spice it up. Go ahead. Go for it.
Chris basically starts by saying, big fan over the years. Great. Thank you, Chris. Bought his first motorcycle at age 34, a new adult rider. And basically, I'm not going to read Chris's whole comment, but essentially the gist of it is Chris said, I'm a little embarrassed to say that I'm not gaining confidence in the way that I thought I would. I rode around in the wind and I was like, when does this end? I don't like this. I'm not having fun. I feel like I'm hanging on for dear life. I'm not feeling free. I'm feeling anxious, basically. And goes on to say, do I need more instruction? Do I need more time? Do I need a different style of bike? That kind of thing. And this is not a question that we see very often. So we wanted to address it because this is tricky, right? What's your approach here?
I think it's a very honest question or a very honest response, Chris. So I want to say thank you first for writing in and being so candid. Because Chris does end by saying, maybe I shouldn't be on a bike. And like, that's hard to hear, right? Because I think we do a lot of building people up on this podcast and we do a lot of encouraging people to go out and get on a motorcycle. So hearing Chris's reaction has been a little bit disappointing, but I want to say that there's a lot of variables here, right? Chris bought a used bike, it sounds like. Maybe somebody let all the sag out. Maybe the suspension's just laying on the ground and it's wallowing all over the place. Maybe the tires are bad. A set of worn tires is not going to inspire confidence. There's so many variables just with the motorcycle that I think that would be where I would start is trying to figure out if it's a motorcycle issue, taking it to somebody that, even if it's just a friend that rides or if it's a repair shop and all you say is like, can you ride this around and let me know if there's anything wrong with the bike? Yep. That's where I'd start. But then also riding in the wind is the main thing he noted here. That is intimidating. Riding in the wind is just a little bit nerve-wracking to get used to until you've got a few years under your belt. That's something that I remember my first time, and it was like, it's a white knuckle experience. But I'm wondering if there's something else going on here with the motorcycle itself.
That's my first take as well is that you should make sure that the machine is sound, because if it's not, then you wouldn't be enjoying yourself. And maybe try to bite off a little bit less, as far as what you're taking on, whether it's like, riding in good weather or going to a place where it's particularly quiet neighborhood or a particularly empty road, so you don't feel intimidated by anything that's going on around you. But I think, sad as it is, what I would like to end on with this, and addressing Chris's comment and sort of questions, is that if it doesn't feel right and you're not having fun, then the answer is maybe it's not for you. It's not an activity that is for everyone, and we're not in any way, shape, or form going to advise against something that brings you joy. But we, in the same way, we would say if you're terrified the whole time, you're not having fun, don't feel obligated to do it. Or maybe just back off and start smaller. Get a small dirt bike and ride some trails. Like, don't even do a street bike at all. Get something really small, really unintimidating, something like that.
And I don't remember, because he goes, maybe I need some instruction. I don't know if Chris took an MSF course or not. Maybe some instruction would be the way to do it too. I know that Zach and I are both big proponents of rider education, whether that's an MSF course or whether that's an off-road course or it's a street course. Like, there's a lot of different ways you can get more comfortable. So I would say, Chris, don't give up yet. Try and figure out, whether or not it's the bike. Maybe take a rider training course if you haven't already done so. But to Zach's point, we want to make sure everyone is safe and comfortable out there. So if it turns out this just isn't for you, hopefully you'll still listen to the podcast and we can still have entertaining conversations about motorcycling.
Indeed. This doesn't mean our friendship has to end, Chris.
No.
All right. That's the end of viewer comments. That's basically the end of the episode. This is the part where we remind you to please leave a comment if you're watching and listening on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast in any other way, or if you just miss us, send an email to highside@RevZilla.com with questions, comments, concerns. And if you have time, please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts so that we get some feedback and you could win a t-shirt.
Yeah. And our winners today, again, would be Clyde Francis and 2 for 1. So please make sure you shoot us an email and let us know that we called out your names, and we will make sure you get a t-shirt. And remember, Zach and I are competing for mileage, and you should too. Make sure you sign up at rideforkids.org/ride. Take a screenshot of you signing up. Send us an email at highside@RevZilla.com. and Zach and I are going to pick one lucky winner to send a bunch of Motul stuff.
So you got a podcast about movies. You got a chance to win a T-shirt. You got a chance to win oil. You got a chance to help cure pediatric brain tumors. We've delivered all we can today, I think.
So for now, until next time, adios.
See you, everybody.